Welcome to the Change Life Destiny podcast, where healthcare is being reimagined one conversation at a time. We spotlight the people, innovations, and ideas moving us from sick care to self-care and from reactivity to true prevention. This season was recorded live at the CLD conference, a place to connect, learn, and build a new future together. Get inspired at changelifedestiny.com. Let's dive in.
Hi, Doctor. Welcome to Change Life Destiny podcast.
Thank you, Aaron. Good to be with you.
And that is Dr. Nathan Bryan.
That's correct.
Correct? So tell me, what kind of doctor are you?
Well, I'm a PhD. I got an undergraduate degree in biochemistry from University of Texas. I got a PhD in molecular and cellular physiology from LSU School of Medicine. And then I did postdoctoral training at Boston University School of Medicine and the Whitaker Cardiovascular Institute. So really training on, physiology, medicine, how does, what makes people sick and how do we get them better?
Well, PhD is the top of the food chain there. Yes. So what about your history? Tell us how you came to, what is your passion? How is it that became your life pursuit?
I've always had an interest in science and medicine, even in high school. Graduated top of my class, always good at math and science. But, I realized when I was 10 or 11 years old, my dad had a serious car accident, left him paralyzed from the waist down. He's been in a wheelchair for 40-something years. And I watched the standard of care in the healthcare system fail my dad. And, going back, 40 years now. And I just knew that there had to be a better way, dealing with non-healing ulcers, dealing with resistant hypertension, diabetes, metabolic disease in a sedentary person.
Yeah.
And, I basically had to take his health into my own hands and started developing strategies and technologies where we eventually, managed his hypertension. We healed non-healing wounds. But that was my original interest in science and medicine, just trying to figure out how can we do better.
Yeah.
From a very personal standpoint. And then, when I was at the University of Texas at Austin, I had a chance to do undergraduate research during my undergraduate studies and fell in love with basic science and research, really the feeling of discovery.
Yeah.
And that really pursued my PhD in medicine and molecular and cellular physiology. And number one, because we have to figure out, you can't treat or cure or mitigate any disease if you don't know what causes it. In order to do that, you have to understand how the human body is designed.
Right.
Understand the biochemistry, understand the physiology, understand how these systems work together. And if one thing goes wrong over here, it could affect downstream way over here. And modern medicine doesn't practice that way, right? It's siloed. Cardiologists only look at the heart and vasculature. The GI docs only look at, the gut. Neurologists, the brain. The endocrinologist, hormones. But we forget everything is connected.
Yeah, I think it's, for lack of a better word, the nature of the beast. Things are so complex that as you specialize, that's almost all we can handle, right?
Yeah.
Cardiologists and so on. But you're talking about a molecular level, right? It's so...
Well, I focus specifically on a single molecule called nitric oxide. It's a gas that's produced in the lining of the blood vessel, and it regulates. It regulates a host of biological responses, from regulating blood flow and blood pressure, regulating oxygen uptake, oxygen delivery, mobilizing our own stem cells. It's part of our immune function, how we kill off invading pathogens. It's a neurotransmitter in the central nervous system. So this ubiquitously produced molecule regulates a host of cellular functions. So what we've discovered and what we've realized over the past 35, 40 years is that the loss of the production of nitric oxide is really what leads to many age-related chronic disease, poorly managed chronic diseases today.
So we produce this naturally.
It's a naturally produced molecule.
But then at some point we stop. Or for some reason?
Yeah, at some point and for some reason. There's always a reason, but it seems to be a gradual decline. Right? So the older we get, the less nitric oxide we make through the natural production by the enzyme found in the lining of the blood vessel. So we call this endothelial dysfunction. When the endothelial cells no longer function properly to produce nitric oxide, you start to develop erectile dysfunction because you can't dilate the blood vessels for sexual function. You can't dilate the systemic or the resistance arteries so that you develop high blood pressure. This molecule is involved in insulin signaling and glucose uptake, so you develop metabolic disease, type 2 insulin-resistant diabetes. Now we're finding that you develop vascular dementia and Alzheimer's, and you become immunocompromised. You're more susceptible to viral infections, bacterial infections, parasites, fungal infections. So this is a key regulatory molecule that's absolutely essential for longevity and well-being.
So what's the trigger for that for that molecule to stop? I mean, for us to stop producing it, is it our diet? Is it lack of something?
It's all of the above. It's really the Western lifestyle. It's diet. It's a lack of physical exercise. It's overeating, particularly high glycemic index foods, sugar, carbohydrates. Sugar is really the enemy, because what we're finding is sugar is sticky, right?
Yeah.
If you spill a soda or sweet tea on the counter, you come back the next day, it's sticky.
Right.
So when we have too much sugar in our body, it sticks. It sticks to proteins. It sticks to enzymes. We measure this clinically as hemoglobin A1C. It's the amount of sugar stuck to the hemoglobin molecule.
Okay.
But it doesn't just stick to hemoglobin. It sticks to enzymes. The enzyme that makes nitric oxide completely renders it dysfunctional, so it can no longer make nitric oxide. So you can activate it, stimulate it, but there's sugar stuck to it. It can't undergo a conformational change, and it can't do its job. Sugar's a big one. Then, lack of physical exercise, sedentary lifestyle, use of mouthwash, fluoride in our toothpaste, antacids, antibiotics. All of this is completely shutting down nitric oxide.
Wow, use of mouthwash? So
yeah.
How is that because of a chemical that's in there, or?
Well, what we discovered probably 30 years ago, it was first discovered that there are oral bacteria that live on the crypts of the tongue. And they're there to help the body naturally produce nitric oxide. So when we eat things like green leafy vegetables, there's a molecule called inorganic nitrate that's taken up, concentrated in our salivary glands. And when we salivate, these bacteria respire on this nitrogen and can produce nitric oxide when we swallow our own saliva. So if we're disrupting these through fluoride toothpaste or through antiseptic mouth rinses, we see nitric oxide production go down and we see blood pressure come up.
that is just mind-blowing.
No, it is. And people are well-intended, right? Because you go to your dentist and he goes, brush your teeth, use fluoride rinses, use mouthwash so you have fresh breath. And unbeknownst to them, they're killing a major nitric oxide production pathway and leading to an increase in blood pressure, which is the number one driver of the number one killer of men and women worldwide, cardiovascular disease. Something
you mentioned caught my attention, which is that when you talked about salivating and the way we eat sometimes, I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously you're the doctor here, but that juicing, was so popular and everybody's juicing and you get all these nutrients. But then I heard it's like, no, you're stopping the natural way that you eat the apple per se, right? And then when you grab the apple, there's a certain feel to it. And when, so your body starts producing the saliva. And then when you bite into it, and so all those processes are disrupted by juicing. So I'm not saying juicing is bad, but we're not having all that experience. Is that...
No, that's true.
Sounds like what you're saying.
The first stages of digestion are called cephalic digestion. So it's the brain when we smell something, right, or when we sense it with our hand, or when we bite it in our mouth. That starts the cephalic response that leads to secretion of digestive enzymes. It promotes stomach acid production. So if we're bypassing that, we're losing this very important cephalic stage of digestion. And two, it helps form the structure of the mouth. As we evolved, we became, meat eaters, and that creates the structure of the mouth. So, people who have anatomical, where their jaw's pulled back and they've got obstructed airways, sometimes you got to pull the jaw forward, open up the airways. But all that is basically from eating and masticating and breaking down your food and allowing for the entire digestion process to take place.
So we compound what we're doing, our lifestyle, and we get to that depletion or the inability to produce this, right? Our bodies. So recognizing it and stopping it, but how do we change that? How do we go into producing more of it? Is there a limit to,
Now, what we're finding is that, I think there's a stage in every disease that's irreversible, right? If you wait too long, it's a past point of no return. So it's really hard to rescue people with terminal disease.
Yeah.
But I think we have to change the dialogue from medicine being a reactive to a proactive approach. And I think that's the mission of Changing Life and Destiny, was to get ahead of it and understand what's leading to chronic disease and then, be proactive to fix that and restore it. So nitric oxide, I tell people, you just have to stop doing the things that inhibit it and then start doing the things that promote it. So stop using mouthwash, get rid of fluoride in your toothpaste, buy a non-fluorinated toothpaste that can help remineralize the teeth, which provides, electrolytes and minerals the body needs. I just developed my own toothpaste because the industry has failed us for the past 100 years.
It's not in the market.
It's not on the market. And, most toothpaste contain fluoride, and the ones that don't have other chemicals in there that are still destroying and disrupting the microbiome. So, this is a project I've been working on for about 5 years and finally figured out how do we support the oral microbiome, remineralize the teeth, selectively kill pathogenic bacteria, but not kill the good guys.
How do you do that? I know there's a carbon. It's not carbon. What is
it's a hydroxyapatite based toothpaste.
Okay.
Right, which helps me remineralize, strengthen the teeth, prevents cavities. But we've gone a step beyond that because that's just part of the problem. We have to optimize salivary pH because most people with oral dysbiosis have an acid saliva, which creates a completely different environment for the growth of opportunistic pathogens.
Yeah.
So we got to focus on optimal salivary pH. We got to understand the ecology of the microbiome and give them the prebiotics and probiotics they need so that they can grow and populate and respire and produce nitric oxide. So that's just a small list of things we had to the boxes that we checked. But this is amazing. It's going to change. It's going to change dental medicine and oral health, and I think it's going to change the world.
I was going to say it might be small, but that's the biggest thing. That's what we do. Everybody brushes their teeth. Everybody,
every day.
And we're, told that that's what we need to do. And
you do need to brush your teeth, and 2 out of 3 Americans use mouthwash every day. Antiseptic mouthwash. I
use mouthwash every day.
And 2 out of 3 Americans have an unsafe elevation in blood pressure.
I feel like I'm in that group.
Yeah, so you got to get rid of it and stop killing the good bacteria that are producing nitric oxide and regulating blood pressure, and support them.
So we start with that, then diet, no sugars.
Yeah,
right?
Number one. So if you're on antacids, you got to get off antacids. I mean, stomach acid is absolutely essential for digestion, breaking down proteins into amino acids, production of nitric oxide, absorption of nutrients. And then it's just a balanced diet in moderation. I think a high protein with good fats, good natural fats.
Yeah.
Avoid seed oils, avoid sugar, and then throw in some green leafy vegetables in moderation. And for me, I think a 16, 18-hour fast every day is remarkable.
Really?
Yeah, the data on intermittent fasting and caloric restriction is really undeniable in promoting health and longevity and upregulating longevity genes. So eat your last meal at 6 o'clock in the evening and don't eat till noon the next day.
Wow, that goes against every trainer I've ever had. Breakfast is the most important meal, and it has to be a big, healthy breakfast, and you have to eat every so-and-so hours, and if you don't, then your metabolism shuts down.
If you're a competitive athlete and you need to fuel for your competition, maybe.
Right.
But if you're like most Americans, you don't need to graze throughout the day. You should not snack. Yeah, we break a fast every day, right? But
yes.
Breakfast, I eat breakfast at noon. It's not breakfast food, but I break my fast at noon.
Gotcha.
But that's with a high protein, good quality proteins. I grow my own beef, raise my own vegetables. And so it's with very little sugars, no breads, no grains, no seed oils.
So diet, stop that diet and exercise as we should.
Exercise, yeah.
Right. And then, so we talked about it. There's a point where it's not reversible, but if we do start reversing it at some point, right? What can we expect? Where is it that we need to be at it? I mean,
well, there's a hierarchy of symptoms that we see when you lose nitric oxide. So the earliest stages, you see sexual dysfunction in both men and women. Because if you can't produce nitric oxide to dilate the blood vessels of the sex organs, you don't get engorgement.
Flow.
It's all about blood flow.
Right.
So ED is a symptom of nitric oxide deficiency. The next thing, if you don't correct it, you start to get high blood pressure. Because think about it, we've got a finite amount of blood pumping through our blood vessels. So if we can make nitric oxide, the blood vessels are dilated. If we can't make nitric oxide, they're constricted. So now we've got the same volume of blood going through smaller pipes, and simple physics says pressure goes up.
Right.
So if we can normalize nitric oxide production, we can dilate blood vessels and normalize blood pressure.
This is truly the first time I'm hearing about this.
Yeah, it's a physics problem.
Because they're always talking about the cholesterol and the good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, and where it loses your elasticity and so on. And that's the current narrative, if I may say,
it's the greatest myth that's ever been perpetuated in medical science. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Cholesterol, the worst thing you can do is get your cholesterol below 200. Those are the guidelines.
That's what I was going to say. That's what they tell you. That's what they look at. Those are the markers. Is there a way to look at your nitrous oxide production? And
no, because not in a lab, in a blood lab, like you can for cholesterol or vitamin D or triglycerides or things like that. Because nitric oxide, once it's produced, it's gone in less than a second. It's a fleeting gas. We can pick up metabolites in the blood in the research environment, but it's not done clinically. But there are devices. We can measure vascular function. We can look at the degree of smooth muscle hyperplasia and intima media thickness in the carotids. So there's medical devices there are measures that give us an association, really give us an ideal insight into how well your body may be producing nitric oxide, or how it may not be producing any nitric oxide.
Wow.
So then ED, high blood pressure, then you start to develop metabolic disease because nitric oxide is part of insulin signaling and getting glucose in the cell.
Yeah.
And then you typically develop exercise intolerance, where you can't even exercise for 2 to 3 to 4 minutes because you can't dilate the blood vessels. And then eventually you develop metabolic disease, Alzheimer's, cancers of metabolic disease, dysfunctional mitochondria, low oxygen, low pH, low voltage. Nitric oxide controls all that.
Wow. With your research, or is there somewhere where you could point us at? I mean, have you? Is there a website? How do we get a hold of this information from you?
Well, I just published a new book. It's called The Secret of Nitric Oxide: Bringing the Science to Life, and I tell this whole 40-year story of what is nitric oxide, how was it discovered, what led to a Nobel Prize in 1998, and hopefully bring awareness around these simple things that we've discussed on people to get an insight. And I never thought about this, so let's stop using mouthwash, get rid of fluoride.
Yeah.
And then it also tells my personal journey of discovery. I've been very fortunate and blessed to make many discoveries that changed the field, and several dozen issued patents, and so we've innovated a lot. But I've developed product technology that restores the production of nitric oxide.
Okay.
So based on my discoveries and what the science tells us, we create products that if your body can't make nitric oxide, then we have to do it for you, right? It's
Tell
hormone
me about
replacement
those.
therapy.
What does that look like? What is a product?
Well, nitric oxide is a gas, number one. It's not a pill you can swallow. It's not something you can drink. So we had to create a nitric oxide delivery system. So my claim to fame has been I made a solid dose form of nitric oxide gas. So we make an orally disintegrating tablet. It's a little wafer type. You put it in your mouth, and it slowly dissolves over 5 to 6 minutes. But as it's dissolving, it's liberating this gas. And so we can see it immediately. It's immediate active. You see dilation of the carotids within 10 or 12 seconds. But it's vasoactive, and if your body can't make nitric oxide, then we do it for you. It's hormone replacement therapy, right? If you're low in testosterone, we give you testosterone. We don't give you precursors and hope your body can make testosterone, because that's your problem. It's the same thing with nitric oxide. There are all these companies out there selling you precursors, substrates, and hoping and crossing their fingers and closing their eyes and hoping your body can make nitric oxide out of it. But
so there's wafers in the market?
Yeah, we've had it on the market for a number of years.
Really?
Yeah, our latest technology is called N101. It's a nitric oxide releasing lozenge. We make now we're diversifying our product offerings, because beets, you probably know, in the pre-workout and athletic performance, beets have become a hot item really for the past 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
And so we make a fermented beet powder that we've optimized the nitric oxide activity. We remove all the oxalates from it, because some people are prone to kidney stones. So oxalic acid is bad. We remove all the oxalates. And then we add electrolytes and mitochondrial ATP to it.
So for our viewers, how can we find you? How can we find that? Where is that product accessible?
It's n101.com.
Okay.
It's the letter N, the number 1, letter O, number 1.com. So it's nitric oxide, right? 1 nitrogen, 1 oxygen.
Yeah.
So that's for the products. I have a YouTube channel where I do education and awareness around nitric oxide. It's Dr. Nathan S. Bryan Nitric Oxide on YouTube. I'm searchable on most search engines. Follow me on Instagram at Dr. Nathan S. Bryan. I encourage you to get the book, read the book, nathansbook.com. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold.
Do you have it on Audible?
It is being, it's on Audible. We're having it translated into Portuguese, Spanish, Chinese, German. So we're having it translated as we speak. But, you know, it's been really well reviewed. I was on Fox and Friends a couple of, last month where we launched the book. I did a satellite media tour on, I think, 41 television interviews within 6 hours one day. So it's received a lot of praise, and you know, a lot of people say it's the most important book they've ever read. Well,
that is awesome. Thank you so much, Doctor. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks you very much.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Change Life Destiny podcast. If you loved what you heard, share it with a friend and follow us for more bold conversations and breakthrough ideas. Ready to take the next step? Visit changelifedestiny.com to join the movement. See you next time, and keep diving in, learning, and leading the change.